Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 29 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we're going to make some items with our new red circuits, including power armor and robots. Enjoy! So what I'm going to do right now is actually make a steel chest. I'm going to plop it in here and essentially just disconnect this computer maker for now. Where basically they put everything they have into that one chest, and then it will make the large iron frames for as long as we need them, and we'll probably find ourselves overloaded on them anyway. But before we work on modules, we might as well do some other stuff. Well, having substations would be nice. It uses most of the parts we're making now with the exception of the junction box, and because we don't really need that many substations, we probably can just carry those around by hand. So that's an easy thing to research. Another thing that we can touch on anyway is air filtering. Utilize absorbing filters to scrub pollution from the atmosphere and compress the air. So what this does is gives you an air compressor, which requires steel items, and it does consume pollution to make compressed air. You can see this comes out of an air compressor. It does require an air filter, and that is made out of some gold foil and some graphite, so that's a use of those two things. And it creates lots of compressed air, and we now have compressed air pipes. We'll have to look at the numbers, and I'm guessing it's just cheaper than the other pipes because it only carries compressed air, and I'm assuming the other ones also do. We can always check, but you get your own set of pipes for this. And you also have another option. It's the air purifier, which uses one of these air compressors and then 4 vents. It essentially does exactly the same thing. It consumes the same amount of pollution. However, the difference is that it doesn't give you any compressed air. It just consumes the filter. So in other words, if you're using this only to clean the air and you don't care about the compressed air, you could just use the air purifier and it won't bother giving you the compressed air. But if you do want the compressed air for something, then use the air compressor. So we'll hit that, and we're starting to get in some really important things. But let's just do that for now, because we've got some other things we need to cover real quick. More cliff, but we don't care about cliffs anymore. Goodbye. Okay, we've got our better modules, and they are simply made from the advanced computer, like everything else is. And other than modules, we don't really need the advanced computers for any kind of automation right now. And let's space this out a little because it doesn't need to be smashed in there. And then we set it up for the tier 2s of each kind, and we probably want to order this in the modules we would actually want to use. So it would be efficiency first, productivity second, and speed third. But there they go. And we can also fill up our inventory with this. But this machine isn't running very fast, and why is that? Just kind of a lack of steel. Which makes sense, we're at the very end here. So it's going to take some time to get it. And this needs to be moved all the way over here. So request advanced computers. However, we don't need those basic modules anymore. Now we need the better ones. There we go. We're going to have to let that run for a while. Well, the thing we wanted to do was make some solar panels. So we could make some portable solar panels. And we can do that. The only thing we would need is a little bit of silicon. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And achievement unlocked, I guess. And we definitely don't need this turret here anymore. Okay, we've got our solar panels. So we can plop them in there. And at least during the daytime, that's another 160 kilowatts, which is actually substantial compared to the battery discharge equipment. And during the daytime, it's actually quite close to what the battery discharge can do. So we finally have our maxed out modular armor, at least the first stage. And I noticed that ethanol is not actually maxed out anymore. So we are using all of the wood that we're making to make nice clean power. Well, now we definitely want to make requests for the tier 1 of each module type, because we don't want them anymore. Any of them that we have in our inventory need to get processed away. It looks like no modules went in there. Let's grab a few of these real quick. Except don't put them in there. Still waiting on that steel, and it's probably gonna have to wait until research is done before that steel catches up, so maybe we should slow it down. But although we are not completely loaded up on productivity modules, we could make a few. And as far as module inserter is concerned, we might as well upgrade it. because we know we need the electric lab, and it's going to be tier 2 modules now. And we can hand program a few of them. So it goes from 40% to 60% extra energy consumption, and the speed goes from 5 to 10, and productivity goes from 4 to 6, and pollution 5 to 7. So basically what that means is energy consumption, productivity, and pollution do scale with each other. However, overall it does make the machine slower. But nonetheless, you always want the best possible productivity, if that was your goal. And certainly at the end point here, with science, we definitely want that. Maybe we can make this last a little longer. This will cause our science consumption to slow down slightly, but that's fine because these last machines in the end weren't really running anyway. And also, we'll want to upgrade all of our assemblers as well. We'll leave the efficiencies in there, and I guess we'll also upgrade the small electric assembler. I don't think they can use productivities, but I don't want to go through the entire factory upgrading things right now. It's going to take a long time, so I would prefer to just hit the parts that it really matters, and that is certainly the things making and consuming the science. And actually we can check this by replacing all of those, and then check that the speed is now 0.56, whereas before it was 0.607. So material efficiency has increased, but speed has decreased. That is an acceptable trade-off for now. We're not super limited on science research, but we are getting to the point where we're limited on things like steel, so slowing down research is probably a pretty good idea. And we really don't want to be making these computers by hand. And these science assemblers are basically the only place in the factory that we're actually using productivity modules right now. Not sure if we're using speed modules. Guess we can actually search for that. That took a second, but we are, so we might as well go to all the places. Certainly the pump jacks would use them. And as far as speed modules go, they're actually quite good when they upgrade, because it's 50% energy consumption to 60% and then 20% speed to 30%. So it costs 50% energy consumption to get the first 20% speed boost, and then only 10% to get that 10% speed boost. So it's so much better than the first tier, so certainly you'd want to use them. And we can actually go back to our calculation here on speed modules for the purposes of making power. So it looks like we're getting a net of about 1.175. So if we upgraded these modules, of course we have to change these numbers too. Now we're producing 1.5 megawatts and consuming about 0.15, which increases the net to 1.35. So it's a big improvement, and we'll basically want to do that with every pump jack. But right now we only have 2 of them, so it's not too much to upgrade. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, we upgraded the assemblers for walls, but we probably don't need those anymore. Unless we need a bunch of walls again. I'm guessing probably not. So I think those machines could just kind of sit around and wait until they get their upgraded modules. Research is done. I guess we could let everything catch up for a little while. It might take a bit, but it'll get caught up eventually. This one inserter here has a charcoal in it that it really shouldn't have had. Interesting. And we are really pounding through the stone and the tin. Surprisingly. It's nice to see us using all of that wood now. That stone mine is probably going to need to be upgraded at some point. But it's still holding. Alright, well, while everything catches up, let's see what we can do here. First, looking at these air pipes, their underground distance is worse. However, the pipe cost is cheaper, where the gas pipes only require 1 iron plate, while the regular pipes require 2. So if you are doing compressed air, you probably want the compressed air pipes. Although it's not too big a deal if you don't use them. We'll have to check to see if you actually can use the regular pipes, but I'm guessing you can because it says any fluid. And the other thing that would be nice is a substation, and I just don't expect us to be making very many of those. So as a result, we probably could just make a couple of junction boxes somewhere and potentially put them in our inventory, but also maybe not, because it just requires steel frames and heavy copper cable. Those are 2 things we're already making elsewhere. And then the red circuits, which are right here. So instead of reinventing the wheel, let's just grab the things that we need. Heavy copper cable is this setup right here, and it looks like it'll work fine here. As far as efficiency modules go, it's 30% to -40, and depending on how many module slots the machine has, that'll have different effects. So if it's a machine with 2 module slots, like assemblers, then it goes from -60 to the limit of -80. So this is the farthest that you can take a 2-slot machine like an assembler. However, we'll plop them in there. However, the 1-slot machines will benefit from the tier 3 modules because they only have the 1 slot. In addition, the 3-slot machines, like the petrochems, they will also benefit from higher tier modules because that potentially can leave you a 3rd module slot for something else after you've gotten the pollution and the energy consumption down as far as they'll go. But as far as 2-slot machines go, you basically clean them up as much as you will. So the wood and rubber continues. And then the thing in the middle will be the junction box. So we'll just place something in there for now. And we're going to be doing a lot of handcrafting of modules for a while. At least until we're caught up on steel, which it looks like we basically are now. So we should be at the maximum speed of this machine. And we basically are. We could speed it up with speed modules. It depends on how slow it is. Well, it can certainly be faster. And since that is a limiting factor, let's put 2 speed modules in there. Which is probably going to be an incredible speed boost here. Because it's making 0.156. And now it is much faster. And it's 0.25. So we'll leave that for a while, and then once we upgrade the entire factory, we'll set it back. But for now, there's a junction box. It'll grab some circuits, and we need the small steel frame, which we have already built right here. And luckily it doesn't have any other inputs, so it is an easy machine to set up. Although, unfortunately, it does need its gap in here. Can't smush things completely together. However, the pole does jump over that, so at least we have that going for us. Fortunately, though, we still need a pole in that gap. But there we go. Since we'll probably just be picking these up by hand, we can place it there for now. So there's junction boxes, and yet one more thing to add to our ever-growing list of requests. Could we do substations nearby? Actually, kind of yes, because it also requires junction boxes and steel frames, and these steel frames would be right here. So perhaps we could. I think we still need those junction boxes for other recipes. Yeah, kind of, but currently not really. So I kind of don't want to carry them just so it's one more slot that's available for something else. Of course, who knows if these items need to go elsewhere. So we're just taking up this space. And that's actually perfectly sized for the amount of boxes that we need, whereas that side will never be. So I think it would be safe to just build a whole nother one of these. So we need more heavy copper cable. We won't worry too much about having it perfectly balanced or anything. And now it just needs steel rods. It probably needs a ton of them, 20 per second. However, I'm guessing it will not run fast enough to need anything crazy. So that set should be good enough. And definitely seems like research has caught up, but it is going to take a while to make modules, but they are starting to pop through now, so I kind of want to just let that catch up if possible. Oh, and we actually don't need to make these rivets at all. And I'm guessing that that will actually be plenty fast. And another request. And there we go. We now have substations. They have a modest wire reach. However, they cover everywhere, which can be useful for certain types of builds. I don't know if I'll change the way the minibus works, because I tend to like to keep doing it the same way. And while we are working on things, let's hit that power armor. Now that we have automated all these things, we can easily build it. Its stats are even better, and it has extra inventory and extra equipment grid. So of course we'd want that. And then it gives us access to some new stuff. Finally, having energy shields would be great, so we don't have to keep popping fish all the time. And also gives us access to the exoskeleton, if we decide we need it. Right now it's not too big a deal, because our factory is covered in concrete, at least most of it, but nonetheless it's nice to have. I tend to put it off in favor of having energy shields, but if we're not even going to leave the base, we don't really need the energy shields. So we'll let that research. Seems like we're keeping up with the natural gas just fine. That the factory seems pretty well balanced as far as petrochem goes. We are using a lot of circuits though, which might be something we want to upgrade someday, but it's holding out. Also, we're finding us basically running out of copper. Let's make sure this is all balanced. It is. It's just a lot of it is being sent over there. So a very quick upgrade is just to drastically increase our copper production here. But I'm hesitant to do so because we are not that far away from being able to basically upgrade all of our ore output. So I don't really want to go through changing these when essentially every single one of them is going to get changed anyway in not that many researches. That after we're done researching our power armor items, we can finally access robo towers. And the robo tower is a 2x2 robot logistics item. That is the first tier behind the industrial roboports, or in other words, the normal ones, which have an incredible supply and construction area compared to the robo towers, but nonetheless, these would be immediately useful. Although we don't get full access to logistics, it does allow us to get logistics for our inventory and also for construction projects. And the most immediate use of them will be upgrading all of the modules in our factory, because that'll be annoying having to constantly pick up 50 modules at a time and replace them. So having robots do that would be a lot better. And making it is not too difficult. We'd have to get all those items moved around to actually automate the robo towers. But we can, and now that we are at the point of having robots, we definitely want to automate the production of these machines if at all possible. And then the logistics robot just requires more items that we are already making, and it gives us access to the passive provider and the storage chest. So the passive provider will make items available for construction projects and also our inventory. And the storage chest also does the same, but it has a dump slot which will allow it to pick up items either from our inventory or from construction projects and actually take them somewhere that they're needed. It's not really a requester chest, but it kind of works as one. And of course, we're going to get request slots and trash slots. And since that's more immediately relevant than having shields or exoskeleton, let's get that researched first. And then after that, we have tons of research for our robots. The first research will give us 35% speed boost, but also really nice is that it will give us a 35% boost to the battery capacity of the robots as well, which is really cool. So that just makes them better overall. And critically, it does not affect clockwork robots. So if you're still using them, there's no point after this. And we have lots and lots of upgrades that we can do to make them even better. So we now have our next tier of power armor. And the cool thing about it is the recipe is essentially the same, just with higher tier materials and twice as many of a few of them. So even the power armor is quite well balanced. So there we go. Power armor. Put it on. We don't need any of this anymore. And we have a whole nother row of slots, so I guess we'll just leave them down there. It's probably fine because once we have robot logistics, pretty much all of this stuff is going to disappear because we're not going to need to walk over plates anymore. The robots will just bring us what we want, so we won't have to do this. But we're not quite there yet. So we have a bigger equipment grid here, and now it's time to decide what to do with it. Well, certainly a big limiting factor are these battery discharges. Having more robots would be nice, but also more output would be nice too. That said though, I don't really feel like we're that short on robots. I mean, sometimes yes, but they're about to get huge upgrades to speed and cargo capacity. So just having these might be enough. However, having more battery discharges will definitely help. So how about another 2 for now? Because you can see how slowly those things are charging up. So once those fill up, it's much faster. This would give us some slots for some exoskeletons. And to check, they use 200 kilowatts each while we're moving, which can be supplied by 2 battery discharges. And then that would leave us a bunch of extra slots here. We can put some accumulators in there and also some solar panels because nothing else would fit down there. We do need a night vision in here though, which does take up a lot of space, so I'm guessing we need to pull out a battery discharge. Let's put it down there so the night vision can go up there. We'll see how it works by having exoskeletons in here and the 2 roboports. If it seems like the 2 roboports are not enough, we can always upgrade. But we're definitely charging way faster than we were before. So having the solar panels definitely helps too. I guess we'll just grind away the modular armor. And we'll hold on to the battery discharge in case we need it. Well, so long as we're running around and waiting, definitely we would want to have better modules in all of the mines, because that's just a huge energy and pollution reduction. Awesome, awesome. It's time to have a robot network, finally. I have noticed, though, we are at 5,000 of sour gas, which means we're basically at the point where we want to start dumping that material, if possible. Because otherwise we're kind of wasting the output of our derrick here. So there's a couple ways of doing it. One is to dump it into military research, which we actually can't really do right now. We could certainly store it in research form, because they're so dense. But the other thing that we've been kind of waiting on is refined concrete. The recipe is essentially the same as regular concrete, except it uses steel and it needs sulfur and also twice as much concrete. We've already got this entire setup going, and if we check these numbers, they are balanced. So all we essentially have to do is basically the same thing, and the crafting time is twice as long, so it's going to be kind of in the way here, but we're at that point now where everything's in the way. And I guess we'll just use the tier 1 modules since we have them in our inventory. We definitely want to keep this module production going, and it's getting to the point where it's almost filled up now. So since that's such a limiting factor of our factory, we kind of want to keep picking those up. So one thing to keep in mind is we don't want this to run all of the time. It's only when we're basically not necessarily overloaded on sulfur, but we have more than enough and we don't need it for anything else. So the set point is 5,000, so we definitely always want this pump to run, so we're making use of our derrick. So the set point should be less than 5,000 for this, but we want it to have priority for everything else. So how about we set it to right here and say if sour gas is more than, how about 2,500, it turns on. And right now it wants to. And let's speed that up. There we go. We are very slowly making refined concrete. Requires a ton of steel, and in fact that one belt cannot provide the full amount of steel that we would need once it gets to this point, so it needs to be upgraded. There we go. And this should run for a while and then stop. But now we have some refined concrete, and we can place some of it down. And it's gone. It's hard to tell the difference, but it is better. So if you've got a ton of spare sulfur, that's probably the best place to put it, at least for now. And we're already using it on things like ethanol. Well, we're not using many resources anymore, which means we're basically at the point now of needing robots to automate their delivery. To automate robots, of course, we will need robo towers, which requires a lot of the things that are already here. Well, let's get these going. And the steel frames would basically be this machine right here. Now the computers and the batteries. Batteries are kind of awkward, but they were kind of awkward before, so it's just a little bit more awkward now, where we just keep them going. And we can keep these computers going down as well. And then it's just going straight in. Of course, it'll have an output, and now that we are working with robots, we'll definitely want to have a provider chest here. And between the passive provider and the storage chest, what storage chests are good for is what happens if you have too many items and you need to get rid of it. Where would they go? And it's possible that we might find ourselves with too many roboports, so putting it in a storage chest makes sense. So we'll plop it in there. Make sure the filter is also set to robotowers, so anything that would want to find its way there would. And then we'll put a limiter on here and say a maximum of 10 roboports. And it looks like the parts are here. And there we go. Making robotowers. And then the last part of this is, of course, we need some robots. Both construction and logistics, their recipes are the same. So we just need to look at the things we have access to here. The rotors and the circuits are conveniently on the same belt. However, the construction robots only need the green circuits, but either way, they'll be fine, and also batteries, which are here. So how far back are these rotors? Oh my god. This is painful. Oh, they're so far back. No. Well, at least we use them a little bit to get here. We should have robots of both types, which we do. And now we need to control their introduction into the robot network. And this part is kind of awkward, but we can do it if we just kind of go through here. So regular inserter there, long inserter there, and there'll be a few on the belts, but there they are. Let's just move them forward a little bit and create some space. So to introduce them into the network, we need to have some logic and some robotowers. We'll just put the 2 robotowers here to make this a little simpler. You can get by with only one, but this will work. So they are smaller, and they have quite the construction range. Not so much logistics range, but construction range is substantial. And then some filter inserters going in each direction. And, as an example, you can run a wire to robotowers and get things like the network contents or robot statistics, like available logistics spots, total logistics spots, available construction, and total. So it's kind of up to you how you want to handle it. Generally, it's probably better to base your robot construction based on available logistics spots, because if you run out of logistics spots, you basically always want more. However, we are using the robot attrition mod, which means over time, the amount of robots you're going to have is going to decrease. Or you could base it on the total bots and just set something. So let's do it based on total. So we need some decider combinators in here. Just place them right here. Pull the wire off of each robotower. It doesn't have to be this way. You can just pull it off of one, but we'll just do this. And we'll go by total construction bots, which is T. And if T is less than whatever number we want to have. So let's say we wanted to have 100 of them. We would say 100. And then the output could be anything. But how about we'll just do the green signal. We'll copy it over here, but now, instead of construction robots, it's logistics robots. Which is why both of these are sending an output, because they are trying to put more robots in. And then we will connect these to each of those filter inserters and tell the filter inserter to only pick up the relevant robot that it is being controlled with. And then the on and off condition is based on a green circle, where it needs to have at least one. And when it does that, robots are now being placed into the network, and then once we get 100 of each of them, it will stop. So that way we can select how many robots we want in the network at any given time by changing this number. Or if you'd rather have it go by available robots, you could just use the different signal and set them appropriately. But it's going pretty good. And now that we have robotowers on the network, it means we can just start placing them. And wherever they make sense is fine. Of course, their range is relatively low, so you're just going to have to kind of deal with it. For now, how about we place them on the top? And now that we do, robots are helping. Isn't it amazing? So basically, we just kind of want to keep doing this until the whole factory is covered. And now that we have that gap, we can just kind of place all of these. We could try to squeeze them inside our minibus, but we don't really need to. This is good enough for now. What we want to do now is kind of cover the basic production areas of the factory and make them basically anywhere that would need modules, so then we could replace them. And the construction zone is much wider than the logistics zone. It would still be nice to have the factory covered by logistics zones, but at least for now in doing this, we can easily cover quite a bit. Because then you look out and we actually have quite a bit covered here. And they will very slowly kind of work their way out. I have noticed that we are above 3,000 of bitumen, which means it's starting to get overloaded. It's not super overloaded, but also we are kind of high on sour gas as well. And that's because, well, we just can't place any of the concrete right now. Of course, that is very fixable. Awesome, well, robots are faster now. So lots of concrete. It's going to completely trash our inventory unless we place new concrete down. So let's try that. Okay, our robot zone has covered the main production area, which means now we can upgrade every single module in here. Let's make sure everything is set with the tier 2s. So we'll walk through and select absolutely everything. Well, except the parts that use the productivities. But I guess even the productivities will get priority here. So this is acceptable. But it would be down to here. And lots of stuff getting done here. Of course, our own robots are helping when they can. But this is going to create a problem where they're not going to be able to place these extras down. So we need to expand the network and say these filters are for the tier 1 modules. And that's why we definitely wanted robots for this, because there's definitely a lot that needs to be done. And also, we do need to place these on the networks as well. Get rid of these and slide them in. Because yeah, now we're basically waiting on those better modules. And they're not coming through because no steel. So let's cut off research and let it catch up. Because we're not that far away from the industrial roboports, with their much wider 64 by 64 supply area compared to the 32 by 32, which is a much bigger difference, we probably should avoid covering the entire factory. And then once we have these, we can upgrade the factory for construction. And really, it's only the ore washing that we need to go through to get to that point, which is the next thing we're going to do. So for now, our focus will be on essentially just getting modules covered. Because if robots can access everywhere where modules go, then they probably have a sufficient coverage area. Also important to note is that you cannot put filters on these storage chests. So walking over these transfer plates no longer works. We now have to use robot logistics for this, and that's fine. It's just going to be a slow process. But if we say we don't want any efficiency modules anymore, they're put into trash, and so long as we're in the network, and we have to be careful about this because it doesn't cover very much, the robots will come and help. And there's the line of robots. And there they go. So right now we probably only really want to put trash in our logistics, just because we don't care if a robot was coming to grab trash and then it stopped. It's a lot more annoying if it's supplying us with the resources. Plus, we already have these transfer plates to supply us, so it's not like we really need to replace them anytime soon. Because all of this is automated now. That over time, those 225 Module 2s will get replaced. We definitely need to take care of the bitumen here before it gets too overloaded. But honestly, we probably should set this to 1,000 now, because now it's time to process it. So luckily the signal is on this wire already, and we want this level, well, to essentially to go to maximum now that I think about it, because we want to try to use basically all of the bitumen. There's really no reason to keep it. So we take that control off, and it's going to keep running and fill it up all the way. So at some point we need to put this fuel into, well, for a lack of a better term, the fuel network. And that basically starts up here. And I don't often use this, but we can use Belt Visualizer by hovering over it and hitting H to follow where all that coke is actually going. That the coke over here is being used for steel, but then the rest of this is basically being sent along the fuel belt. So we would need to insert it somewhere around here for it to have the effect we'd want. And it also so happens to end right here. And essentially it would go up here, where if it got to this point, the only reason we'd want it to keep going is if we had too much of the bitumen. And that would essentially be more than 3,000. And of course, it's not going to quite be there anymore now that it has filled up, but the logic would work all the same. So let's push this out here so we can get that bitumen signal. Although we want two conditions for this to run. So actually we need to have some logic in here. So we'll plop them in there. Signal goes down. One is definitely the bitumen is too high, and let's say that high point is 3,000 or 75%. It gets a green signal. And the other one is that graphitic coke is also high. So if the graphitic coke is low, there's no reason to be dumping it because bitumen has somewhere to go. So we'll make that number the same. And we'll take both of those signals, send them through here, and if both are true, green is equal to 2, then they will both be allowed to run. And unfortunately, it's just barely below that point now, and it would merge together, but the input priority would be on the right, and then it would just go down the system. So we're going to have to let it run for a few minutes. And the robots are making progress here, very slowly replacing all those modules. And that's why we wanted the robots for it, because replacing them was going to be a time-consuming process. But they're working on it, and since the steel has caught up, it's time for some more research. Well, we did finish up those exoskeletons, so we can put them in our inventory and see how they work. And we'll just use energy shields later when we actually need to fight some biters. It'll certainly be nice to move faster. So there we go. Now we can move very fast. I mean, I approve. Faster is better. We couldn't really put any more in here without really sacrificing the performance. So I'll take it. Placing things is so fast now. Of course, there's so many cliffs too. So much faster. And even while moving, it does barely charge up the exoskeletons because they use 200 and our discharge is 250, so we can barely power it, although it is consuming a lot of battery power though. So that might be a concern. We might have to scale it back just for that because we're going through batteries very quickly. But also, we're doing a lot of running around. Well, now the bitumen has hit 3,000. So we're getting green circles for each, which means now we can get rid of the graphitic coke. So hooking this up is pulling out the graphitic coke, and now it's metering itself because the bitumen is now at a acceptable level. So it comes in here, and now it's getting consumed. It's very hard to tell the difference between the two, especially when they're mixed on a belt like this. And one side is getting used more than the other. But we're probably not going to be consuming this very fast, where we don't really need to worry about it. Just let it kind of run and do its thing. Well, the robot worker speed is almost done, and I kind of want to stop that because we've basically covered everything that we have access to. And the robots are still making progress, but once they're done with this, they're just going to have more machines to cover. So it's going to be a long process for them. But they're faster now. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to start talking about ore washing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.